Hi guys, it's Ornlu, and oh no, we're back here again. With patch 5.8 making a ton of balance changes, I thought it was fitting to do a whole other set of 1v1 Arabia tier list, and the fact that the last set of videos I did on this is around, 7 months old-ish? The meta has progressed so much that I think a lot of the last set of tier list videos they're like really inaccurate. So I decided that okay, this is a good opportunity to just start afresh and do this thing all over again. And not all of the civilizations have received balance changes. Probably around half of them have not. So I will be repeating, I guess, some information for there, actually a fair amount of it. But I still think it's useful to look at these civs in a more modern context because unlike most of Age of Empires history, the meta is changing so rapidly now that there's a lot of new strategies and aspects of these civilizations that I feel is worth examining. And just before we dive right in here, I would just note that this tier list is totally subjective on my part. It is not absolute. You can agree or disagree with it, and that's totally fine. And I would say that give me the leniency of like plus or minus 1 or 2 spots. So it's like if you really feel like Mayans should be number 2 and Malians should be number 3, like doesn't matter that much. This is all just a sort of, fun intellectual exercise. And of course, give me your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, without further ado, let's get on into this, shall we? All right, so here we are with the S plus tier and S tier. So the way I'm going to structure these videos for this set of tier lists is I'm going to break it into 3 parts because I essentially have 6 tiers, so that's easy. So yeah, I'm going to just sort of smush together what I call the S plus tier and S tier. And just to briefly introduce this, I think that all of these civilizations are really good, but I didn't want to put 9 civilizations in one tier. That seemed like kind of a lot. And I feel like these 9 civilizations specifically stand above the rest that I'll discuss later. But I felt like there was some sort of need to differentiate them a little bit further. So I did separate them into the S plus tier and S tier, but I do think that these 2 tiers are much closer together in terms of power level than the other tiers, I guess you could say. So I guess that's going to be the differentiating factor that I'll be talking about in this video. So kicking things off with numero uno, got the Aztecs. They are just really good. So in AOC, Aztecs were considered the best 1v1 Arabia civilization by the end of the game's lifespan before people fully switched over to the expansions. After forays into Civs like the Indians and Malians and I don't know, maybe some other stuff being number 1. I feel like after a good long while, many months of playing the expansions, Aztecs should, in my opinion, return to the number 1 spot. And I think what really separates them from every other civilization in the game is that they have so few bad matchups. A lot of the other civilizations I'm going to talk about, even the very highly tiered civilizations that I'm going to talk about in this video, they can have really bad matchups or are somewhat inflexible in their strategy, or both. And although the Aztecs are limited by the fact that they don't have cavalry, they are still really good in the early game, and that's really what's important in an Arabia game. The fact that your villagers can carry +5 means that your farming and economy is one of the best in the game. Your military units creating faster means that literally any sort of strategy you do is helped. The extra 50 gold means you can do a 5 militia rush or 5-minute arm rush. And the value of Eagle Warriors in this day and age with the expansions just really gave that civilization the sort of flexibility that it might have lacked even in AOC. And the reason that I would say that Aztecs are better equipped for going for Eagle Warriors than Mayans or Incas is that the extra creation speed helps a ton in the feudal age with Eagle Warriors, where I think you save like 7 or 8 seconds or something like that, because Eagle Warriors take 60 seconds to train in the feudal age for Mayans and Incas, and shaving off 7 or 8 seconds or however much that ends up being quite a significant deal. And then in the mid game, Castle Age is actually probably where they might be slightly weaker-ish, but still insanely good. You have crossbows you can use that are serviceable, skirmishers, monks and siege, some of the best in the game. And early Imperial Age, you have the whole power spike with elite Eagle Warriors. You do have the Jaguar Warrior as an option if you're against a good infantry civilization. You're not going to use it all the time, but you're going to be glad in certain situations that you have that at your disposal. And, what all that put together, I think is just a really strong, consistent civilization at almost every point in the game. And yeah, that's why I put them at number 1. So coming in at number 2, we have the Malians, a newcomer from the African Kingdoms expansion, which has seen a ton of play on so many different map types. I would say that this civilization is one of the few that's viable on pretty much every single standard map type. And that's just because the civilization is just so freaking flexible and strong in the early game. That combo of being strong in the early game and very flexible in your tech tree and options just leads you to be a really good civ on most map types. They are strong in the early game because of the cheaper wood cost on your buildings, saving you plenty of food in the early game, and that even extending throughout the entirety of the game because you're building buildings all game long. And then you get the free gold mining tech. That's just going to help with any sort of archer-based strategy. Also ships, I guess, on water maps, but this is an Arabia tier list. And yeah, archers are just what you want to be making in the feudal age at some point, unless you're going like really hardcore into scouts. And yeah, the Malians, with having a wood discount and a gold resource collection increase, you're just sort of very well put into going down that unit line. But then on top of that, their men-at-arm rush, which usually transitions into the archers, is one of the strongest in the game because of that extra pierce armor for your infantry, your men-at-arms in the feudal age. You do get that 1 extra pierce armor, and although men-at-arms are pretty terrible against archers, it does mean that you're just a little bit harder to kill, can take just a little bit more punishment before going down. And then, in the mid-game, I actually learned this fairly recently. The Malians are the only civilization in the entire game that has every single technology available to them in the Castle Age. Every single unit and technology that you can make in the Castle Age is available to the Malians, which is pretty sick. I guess discounting Eagle Warriors and Battle Elephants because they're region locked. But other than that, they can do literally everything. The fact that you not only have the really strong archer opening, that's also further benefited from the faster researching university, meaning you can get a really quick ballistics. You also have, full upgrades on your knights and camels in the Castle Age, and that is something that very few civilizations can boast. The cheaper wood discount on buildings also going to be helpful for town centers. And yeah, just a really strong mid-game. Can carry that into the Imperial Age, where again, options abound. Got Gebettos, got Champ Scarls potentially, but most likely you're going to be looking at Arbalests in the early Imperial Age, where the lack of bracer can hurt you, or you can look to transition into cavalry with Farimba. As I say all the time on stream, they have the best cavalry of any non-cavalry civilization, if that makes sense. So you got a lot of different options available to you in the late game, but where I think that they can feel a little bit underwhelming compared to the Aztecs is their lack of good, really sort of deathball-y post-Imperial Age army that just can feel impossible to deal with. Where the Aztecs do have that with their Eagle Warriors, and even some of the later civs have stronger, scarier late games than the Malians. Coming in at number 3, we have the Mayans, the Mesoamerican duo along with the Aztecs, who are also super good, as it turns out, on Arabia. So the reason that Mayans are so powerful on this map type is, 1, they're powerful Dark Age. The extra villager is nice, and the big thing, though, is the longer-lasting resources, especially impactful here in that your boar and sheep and deer last longer, just giving you more overall food, which is just such a critical resource in the early game that it can really sort of propel you into doing whatever strategy you want that much more effectively. Then Feudal Age, you can take advantage of the archer discount, The fact that your farmers work slower usually isn't too big of an issue because the Mayan armies are very food light. Usually you're making archers, which don't cost food, or eagle warriors, which cost very little food. So usually that's not too big of an issue, and I believe this has been fixed somewhat in the recent patch, so they're even better. And then, of course, the reason that they're considered so powerful in the mid-game are those plumed archers. They're essentially a cav archer that doesn't take the cav archer bonus damage from, like, pikemen or whatever. So yeah, they're just really cheap, they're really fast, and they're really hard to deal with. And that extends all the way into the Imperial Age, where you can either go all in on the plumed archers, or you can go into Eagle Warriors, where you have El Dorado, where Mayans have the single best Eagle Warriors, I feel, in the most situations, like the most versatile of all of the Eagle Warriors. So that's really good. Also, I guess cheaper walls are nice. Usually more useful in team games, but can still help you, as the Mayans are definitely a more defensively oriented civ than the Aztecs. Where I think they can come into problems is, one, they sort of lack a really powerful power spike that the Malians can have in the early Imperial Age with their cavalry, because you can research Farimba, Cavalier, and Plate Barding armor all at the same time. Aztecs, again, with the aforementioned Eagle Warriors. And the other thing is that Mayans have some pretty bad matchups out there. You know, obviously the most famous one being Mayans versus Goths, but there are other ones that the Mayans can really kind of feels bad man, even against like the Malians, for instance. So due to the slightly polarized nature of the Mayans, I put them at number 3, but it's still pretty hard to go wrong with the Civ in most situations. At number 4, we have the Berbers, who are, again, from the African Kingdoms expansion, and this is a civilization that I just like. Again, it's kind of like the Malians on so many different map types, but on Arabia in particular, you're going to really feel the advantage of the cheaper stable units, the incredibly diverse, powerful late game, the insanely powerful camel archer, and even, I'd say, the faster moving villagers, giving you that much more of a consistent early game. But I think, you know, although the civilization can feel somewhat generic in the feudal age, where you don't really have any advantages to make super powerful use out of, it's for the Castle Age. It's from the Castle Age until the end of the game, whenever that happens to be, where the civilization truly shines. The cheaper stable units means that you can pump out knights or camels while booming, at least to a much better degree than other civilizations. And then you also have that added flexibility with camel archers, which can be really tough to deal with. They're actually, I think, better than Mangudai in the Castle Age. I think they have slightly better stats and are slightly quicker to make even after the nerf. So just a really strong civilization in the Castle Age, can do a ton of different strategies viably. I mean, they don't have Arbalest, but they can still go down the crossbow route in the early Castle Age. And then in the Imperial Age, you're looking at 20% cheaper Cavalier, Hussar, and Camels, Camel Archers, Genitors, and that's all benefiting from the fact that you have access to stuff like guilds, which is crazy, where you can just really sort of maximize the cost efficiency of your army throughout all stages of the game. You have access to gunpowder, you have bombard cannons, you have hand cannons. This civilization can do just about everything. It's just a matter of, I think, Arabia is a map that is skewed most towards the early game, Dark Feudal Age, Early Castle Age, and it's really only when you get to the Castle Age that the Berbers start looking scary, whereas Aztecs, Malians, and Mayans all have several bonuses that really help them in that Dark and Feudal Age where a lot of fighting can take place. Rounding out our arbitrary S+ tier, we have the Incas, who were at first, I think, a little bit underrated as a civilization, but especially throughout the development of this year, really, where we've been playing with all the expansions on Voobly. The Incas have really just shown their might in an Arabia situation, just in that they have so many different gold-intensive counter units. Because in a 1v1, you're really not going to be able to create some sort of deadly post-Imperial Age super gold-intensive army that you can in like a team game or like a Black Forest or even Arena in some situations. You're a lot more limited in terms of what you can potentially do. Like, you don't really ever see siege onagers or, you know, really just heavy siege in general, just because it's so expensive to get going. A lot of the civilizations can't really go for their unique unit because, again, it's just too expensive to get going. But the Incas can. You see the Kamyuks all the time, and the nature of their gold-intensive counter units, and by that I mean Kamyuks, Slingers, and Eagle Warriors, the stuff that benefits from couriers, they do all of that really well. It doesn't really matter that they don't have too much of an eco bonus. Yes, you have the free llama, which gives you a little bit of extra food. Yeah, your houses are a little bit more efficient. They don't really have the same sort of eco bonus that like Mayans and Aztecs do as far as the Native American civs go. But where they really do shine is just in that mid to late game, I think even potentially more so than Aztecs and Mayans in some situations, just because you literally cannot counter what the Civ can throw at you without really good gunpowder or siege. And if you don't have those things, it can be almost impossible to deal with the Incas in the late game. And especially if you're a civilization that is, let's say, one-dimensional and very obvious what you're going for, the Incas can sort of just tailor their military composition to whatever is good against your civilization. And oh boy, are Kamyuks good against cavalry, Slingers good against infantry, etc. And the thing with those units is even stuff other than the thing they're countering, like they're still good against it in most cases. So I just think the civilization is really diverse in what it can do. What holds it back is, again, that real sort of overwhelming eco bonus and lack of cavalry, essentially, which does limit you to some degree. So now we are moving on to the S tier, which is the second tier, and is kind of the hybrid-y tier-ish thing that I mentioned, where these two tiers are much closer together than I think the other subsequent tiers that we'll talk about later. So it's going to be a fairly close comparison. I did just think it was a meaningful breakpoint because I didn't want to put 9 civs in one tier. So talking about the civs in particular now, we have the Huns at number 6. So just missing out on that S plus tier spot. And really that comes from the holes in their tech tree. They actually miss more technologies than any other civilization in the game. However, if any of you have ever played 1v1 Arabia, you know that you like the Huns because they are just such a fast civilization. You have the not needing to build houses, just cleaning up your early game, not having to worry about getting housed like I do all the time. You have just every possible strategy under the sun available to you in the feudal to castle age. Your scouts come out 20% faster. You have archers available to you as normal, benefiting from the not needing to build houses, giving you a ton of saved wood over the course of the game. But the Castle Age is, of course, where the civilization really shines the most. It's when you are saving the most wood from not needing to build houses. You also have the Cav Archer discount, and oh man, are Hun Cav Archers difficult to deal with in mass. You have the fast-producing knights at your disposal. Potentially Tarkans, if you're feeling adventurous. If you're against an Archer Civ, they're actually pretty good. And this is something that can really snowball your advantage into the Imperial Age with fully upgraded Cav Archers minus Ring Archer armor, but you'd rather take the 20% discount. You have fully upgraded Paladins and Trebs that are slightly more accurate, which sometimes helps. But the problem with this Civ is that if they have a really good answer to cavalry archers and heavy cavalry, or just cavalry in general, you're pretty sad. Like, I specifically broke the S tier from the S plus tier here, is that Incas are so good against the Huns, because Huns just don't deal with Kamyuks, and with like a few Eagles or Skirmishers or something to deal with Cav Archers. And the Huns can really sort of struggle against these sorts of things. Also, Huns can really struggle against good camel civs like the Indians, for instance. So they are somewhat limited in what they can do in the late game, like mid to late game, but you're still just so powerful in the early to mid game that I still think they're one of the best 1v1 Arabia civs. So coming in at number 7, we have the Burmese, which is a civilization that I like to think of as, if you don't like archers, they do everything well, because they have great infantry, cavalry, monks, one of the best unique units in the game, solid economy, solid siege, just terrible archers. So where this civilization is exploitable is that if you don't need to worry about your archer defenses, if you're like one of those civilizations that just doesn't deal well with archers, you can have a pretty good shot against the Burmese. But like I said, the fact that Burmese have one of the best M&A into tower rushes in the game due to the extra infantry attack, free lumber camp upgrade, and that sort of natural incentive for you to gather stone to create a rhombi, which can just be so hard to deal with, even after all their nerfs. And, games can be finished with the powerful battle elephants. Your monks are some of the best in the game. You even have some of the best champions and halberdiers in the game, all compounding with the free lumber camp upgrades, giving you that nice little extra eco bonus. This Civ is just really good, except at archers. The problem is, it's just having archers is really advantageous to have on Arabia, where the map is so open, and archers and crossbows just dominating the feudal and castle age respectively. So it's kind of a bit of a bummer for the Burmese that they have a good archer rush due to the free lumber camp upgrades, but really once mid castle age rolls around, you're starting to feel really sad with your archers. So at number 8, we have the Slavs, which is a civilization that I think, compared to my last tier list, really jumped a ton in terms of the ratings, because I think people are really starting to unlock the civilization's potential in that once they fixed their farming speed bonus thing, wow, did people realize that they have a lot of food. It's just one of the best eco bonuses in the mid to late game. You just get so much food over time, and Slavs have a lot of units and I guess technologies that benefit from you having a very strong mid to late game food economy. So this cheaper siege workshop units are nice in the castle age, and then helps a lot in a 1v1 Arabia situation where you are very gold limited compared to a team game with trade. So just being able to produce 15% more siege units is pretty fantastic. And on top of that, you have solid cavalry. The lack of paladin does not matter as much in a 1v1 as it does in a team game, because paladin is really expensive to get in the 1v1. I mean, you're talking at a little over 2k resources that is not replenishable by trade, so not having paladin, not as big of a deal. And then you have just a really good infantry plus siege push, especially with halberdiers with Druzhina and with the cheap siege rams, and it's just a good civ, good eco bonus, and is one of the best executing one of the most powerful late game strategies. Where the civilization falls off is somewhat like the Burmese, is that their archer line is pretty mediocre. Until you have a lot of farms up and running, they don't have much of an eco bonus to speak of. They don't really have any crazy advantages in terms of military bonuses. Their unique unit is a little clunky to use, and their infantry is actually just kind of generic until you get Druzhina. Sorry, free tracking. So yeah, Slavs, really powerful as the game goes on, but they will feel a little bit generic in, say, the feudal-ish age, like feudal in the castle age, where you don't have as many farms, and you're kind of wishing you had better archers than you did, because usually you're forced to go for some amount of archers at some point, unless you can somehow get away with scouts in the castle age. But yeah, other than that small area, Slavs are going to serve you quite well. So rounding up S tier and part 1 of this video, we will have the Ethiopians, one of my favorite civs for 1v1 Arabia, just because they do the things you want to do on Arabia really well. So yes, they are somewhat hindered by their lack of good cavalry options and lack of persistent eco bonuses, which is why they are, I would say, at number 9 because of those two things in particular. The fact is, they have one of the best men-at-arm into archer rushes in the game. The free 100 gold in food means that, hey, free men-at-arm upgrade plus 60 gold. And then, transition into your faster firing archers. It's just really nice to be able to go into any sort of archer skirmishery war in the feudal and castle age and just know that, okay, all other things equal, my archers are better than theirs, unless they're the Britons or Mayans. Other than those two, you can just feel confident taking those archer engagements. But the fun doesn't stop there, because you have the free pikeman upgrade if you are perhaps going to be overwhelmed by cavalry, and then in the late game you do have that full siege workshop tech tree, which no other civilization in the game has. You might be able to get torsion engines. It's going to be really expensive and difficult to do, so I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really far ahead or think you can afford it. But like I said, the fact that you have the full siege tech tree available to you is just really a luxury that no other civ can boast. Their unique unit, the Shotel Warrior, is situationally really good. Most of the time it's going to be too expensive to go for in a 1v1, again, without that trade available to you. But where you will find this unit really shine is against Eagle Warriors. This unit just chews through Eagle Warriors. So Eagle Warriors are just a normally strong counter to archers in general, archer civs, but the Ethiopians have a great answer to that, whereas some other civs do not. So with that said, we will round out part 1 of our tier list extravaganza. The full tier list is there. I will be talking about A tier and B tier in the next video, and then C tier and D tier in the final video. So definitely stay tuned for those. Please do consider leaving a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe, all that sort of sellouty stuff. These videos actually do take a very long time to make. I do go through every single civilization matchup just to make this tier list, so it is a lot of work, so I do appreciate the support. But yeah, definitely leave your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.